Before we get into today's episode, I'm excited to share with you a new podcast called Goodniks. We all know them, those people who just do good things in the world.
Goodniks explores the journey and meaning of doing good in the world.
I get to choose every day when I wake up whether I'm going to work for a Fortune 500 and make a ton of money or work for the movement that is the arc of moral justice.
But I realized that I also had an obligation to weaponize my privilege.
One day we said, okay, if the city's not going to do it, the state's not going to do it, if some large corporation's not going to do it, why not us?
And if there were enough of you, if you were organized enough, if you were loud enough, it would be too difficult for them to ignore you.
Goodniks, created by Jeff Leitner, hosted by Annalisa and Relay, available everywhere you listen to podcasts.
Today's episode is part of our Season 2 series on the theme of home. Welcome to another episode of Art Heals All Wounds, where we explore the intersection between art and well-being. I'm your host, Pam Uzel. When and where did you find that place that felt like home? For you, it might be the place where you were born. It could be the perfect fit for you. Maybe you had to search a little bit. That was my experience. And when I arrived in San Francisco in my early 20s, I knew that I was home. What was it about San Francisco that made me feel at home? I think it was that I could be myself there, my whole self, the parts of myself that I didn't even know yet. So much of who I am is thanks to finding that home in San Francisco and being able to partake in the culture created by so many people who were there long before I came. I lived in a tiny apartment in the Mission District with amazing taquerias on every block and live mariachi music spilling out of the restaurants every weekend night. The culture was priceless. Until it wasn't. People with money to burn began buying up the Mission District to get a piece of it. And many of the residents who made that culture were priced out or forced out through evictions. It's ironic, this commodification of culture. It's like gobbling up all the baked goods, but hoping that the kitchen will continue to smell like cookies. My guest on this episode is singer-songwriter Candace Roberts. San Francisco was her city too. She watched, though, as more and more small businesses went under, as people were evicted in order to raise rents or sell properties, and as more and more luxury housing was being built. And she thought, this is not my city anymore.
Now she's not my city anymore.
Candace wrote the song we're listening to, Not My City Anymore, and in 2014 made a video to go with it. There was a real sense of urgency at that time to push back against the tax giveaways to big tech and stop evictions that were displacing longtime residents of the city. To be really clear, the battle for more affordable housing, not just in San Francisco, but in Oakland, in Berkeley, in just about every Bay Area city is still taking place. And this in turn is leading to the creation of new culture as people reaffirm their connections to a place. As for Candace, she doesn't live in San Francisco anymore. Through her songs, though, she explores the many ways you can be at home, even after leaving the place you thought would always be your city. From the time she was a little girl, Candace Roberts wanted to write songs. Lyrics always came easily to her, but the melodies didn't come along until later. With a great voice and an amazing sense of humor, Candace is a natural performer. Her work has been featured on the BBC, KQED, NPR, and NBC. Candace has a gift for taking experiences that someone else might carry as a shameful secret and turning them into art. When you engage with her work, you realize that the embarrassments that you're hiding really aren't so terrible, and in fact, can even be funny. No one leaves one of Candace's shows without getting a hit on how humor and self-compassion can turn the everyday ups and downs of being human into a cause of celebration. Since leaving San Francisco, Candace has also become a certified hypnotherapist and a Journey-accredited practitioner. I'll quote from the description of Candace's practice on her website. Heart-centered collaborative journeys inward to uncover and release the stuck places and return us to our very nature, freedom, wholeness, and love. That description works perfectly for Candace's work in songwriting and performance too. Before we meet today's guest, I want to tell you about an app called Newsly. Newsly is an all-in-one audio super app for iOS and Android. There really hasn't been an app like Newsly before now. Newsly picks up all of the trending articles on the web and reads them to you in a natural human voice. You can find any topic you're interested in, sports, politics, or art. I've loved using this app. I listen to it when I'm commuting or when I'm gardening or while I'm cooking, anytime where I want to catch a little bit of news but my hands are full or I can't stop to read. You can also find trending podcasts from over 50 countries on Newsly, including Art Heals All Wounds. Newsly has become my go-to listening app for podcasts. If you want to try Newsly yourself, just download it from www.newsly.me. And if you use the promo code ARTHEALS, you'll get a free 1-month premium subscription. I'll include all of this info in the show notes so that you can just click on the link and use the Art Heals promo to get your free trial. Now, let's meet this week's guest. Hi, Candace. Thank you so much for being on this episode of Art Heals All Wounds. Can you introduce yourself by telling us who you are and what you do?
Hi, Pam. Hello. I'm Candace Roberts. I guess you could say there is this term I heard thrown around for many years called artist healer, and it seems to fit. I'm a singer-songwriter, performer, and I also practice hypnotherapy and do microdosing coaching with clients. So, yeah, a little bit of both. The art and the healing.
The art and the healing, the art of healing.
The art of healing, yeah. Healing arts.
Yes. So I want to talk a little bit about the singer-songwriter performance. How did you get started doing that?
Well, I feel like I always had aspirations to write songs from when I was super young. I mean, I was so enchanted with old Hollywood musicals, and a neighbor friend of mine, Courtney, we used to make up little songs together, just sort of creating new lyrics to, like, I don't know, like a Dolly Parton song or something. And I always wanted to write my own, but it really didn't come actually until I was in my late 20s. It was like I took some songwriting classes, but it was just like nothing was there. And then in my late 20s, it was just these melodies started happening, lyrics. I mean, I got to back that up for a second. It's not entirely true. For most of my life, I was always riffing on already established jingles. So I would just always commercial jingles, anything. But it was like I was always creating new lyrics and stuff like that, and annoying one of my sisters and annoying people with just incessant looping of jingles. And then again, when I was in my late 20s, these lyrics and these ideas and my own melodies finally started showing up. But I felt like it was a little bit later than I would have liked, but there it was. And I started recording and recorded a record, an album, and then I started playing my stuff out live in the San Francisco Bay Area, doing what I guess I would call cabaret shows, a
Mhm.
lot of storytelling mixed with songs, my own songs, a lot of it very campy commentary, political commentary, very personal stories of, embarrassing things, humiliating things, but all, I don't know. So it was just, you know, revealing a lot of stuff of a very personal nature. And so I did some regular monthly shows at Martuni's Piano Bar in San Francisco. And
Mm.
that was probably my longest residency. And then, yeah, around the Bay Area and just there's lapses, but there you have it, I guess.
Well, I have seen you perform, and you have like a little fake bio, maybe it's fake, on your website saying that you won the coveted role of the Virgin Mary in your whatever, your third grade play or something like
It's
that.
not fake.
It's not fake? Oh my god, it was so funny.
It's not fake.
But that's why I did assume that, at least in terms of performance, that you've been doing that a long time.
Yes, performance. No, 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 performance. You're right. I'm missing a chunk here. When I was a kid, I mean, it still was a little late. There was some neighborhood kids that were in plays, and I would always see them and go to their plays and always want to do it. But I was such a late bloomer. I think that's always been such a theme. I'd say in seventh grade was my first play. It was just like a local children's theater production. One was called Kids the Musical. Then I was in The Wizard of Oz. And so I did plays and musicals from middle school onward, and studied music in college and got a music degree and stuff like that. So I was always performing. Yes, you're right. And I think my own songs, the singer-songwriter stuff, came later. And as a
Okay.
kid, I mean, we were putting on shows for our parents and dressing up, and so yeah, it was always there, I guess.
That's hilarious. Well, of course, when I knew that we were going to do this podcast, I went back and I listened to what I would call are your more prominent songs that I'm aware of. And when I was watching, first of all, I was sobbing during all of them, but especially the one that gets me going is Not My City Anymore. That one, which is interesting because you always, even in a more serious song, you insert humorous things. So it's kind of a strange song to be sobbing to, but I was. And you had two back to back, which were about the rising cost of housing and inequity that was happening in San Francisco around the tech boom. So I'm wondering if you can talk about Not My City Anymore and Hello, Ed Lee. I was there for all that, but I was not there for when you thought of to do these songs and all that stuff.
Yeah, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. Actually, I grew up in Fremont, which is a suburb. And when we were kids, we had a Volkswagen van. All six of us, we used to pile into the van and drive into San Francisco for some sort of, a day in the city. And we would be driving across the Bay Bridge hitting the skyline of San Francisco. And I remember my dad always used to say, the Emerald City of Oz, and, seeing the skyline. And that just thrilled me. I mean, it was just like, I knew I was going to live in San Francisco someday. And it was like this magical place. And it just, when I finally moved there in my 20s, it was magic. It was just like, come as you are, just whoever you are. It just felt like there was a certain magic and acceptance and possibility about it. And I lived off and on in San Francisco for about, God, like I guess 15 years. And I started to notice, I don't know when it was. God, when did I start noticing? Maybe 2011, 2012, all those condos started going up. I was pet sitting a lot then in the Castro. And I remember just yeah, these like kind of generic cookie cutter condos going up everywhere. And then, all of our favorite haunts starting to shut down, people being evicted left and right, oh, this is, this performance venue shut down, this art supply store shut down, this, so and so got evicted. And I felt like I would go to gatherings or parties, and it was all anyone was talking about was just how much the city was changing. And it felt literally like I was depressed or grieving. I mean, it really felt like there was this palpable pain or grief in me, just walking around, seeing these condos and just experiencing the change. And I remember walking down the street again and in front of one of these new developments, these condo developments, and just saying, oh my God, this is not my city anymore. I think I just said it to myself. And then, I don't know, the melody came and a whole song came, and it came so quickly. It was like one of those ones that just, the goodies just come pretty quickly, I feel like. And from there, it was, I wrote the song and I started performing it live. And then I just thought, God, I need to make a video about this or something. And it just felt very similar to all these gold rush eras, I think, in San Francisco and the Bay Area. And I mean, I will say this, I was driving through in San Francisco yesterday, and I guess I've said this a few times to folks that sometimes it feels like the feeling of San Francisco is it's like a relationship I used to be in. It's like an ex. It's like I used to be in a very intimate relationship with San Francisco. And now it's like someone I used to be very intimate with, but it's not the same anymore. It's like driving around and you're like, oh yeah, we used to be, really tight. This used to be the place. This is where my heart was. And it's not here anymore,
Right. It's so weird that you say that, because I was having that thought that for me, San Francisco is like that first love who just brutally broke your heart. And for me, I hate to say, I don't think I know I'm not over it yet. And I'm not sure when or if I ever will be. And when I saw your song, Not My City Anymore, one of the things that was making me cry is that it reminded me oh yeah, this is when I still had hope, 2014.
Right.
And there was such a movement about the evictions and about all, as you say, the free goodies that the tech, in your song, you say this, the free goodies that the tech industry was getting. And I remember when I watch your song, I think, oh yeah, I used to have hope that we could do something about this. And not only is my San Francisco dead, but my hope is dead. And I think that's why I was sobbing, but I just I haven't gotten over it yet, which is interesting.
That's all those words make a lot of sense to me. It's like a breakup. It's like I broke up with San Francisco. Yeah. And I mean, maybe I'm trying to think if I'm over it. I guess it's just sort of like a dull pain or dull ache in the background when I go there. It's like, it's like seeing an ex, sort of like, oh yeah, we used to be so in love. And here we are, and I'm, there's still love for you or fondness, but it's not the same. And it's like, I guess I agree that period when I wrote it, I had so much hope. You're right. I got a bit involved in some of the anti-eviction stuff for a little while. And it felt like we're going to do something. We're really going to stand up to this. And yeah, there was hope.
There was hope. And then you did, fairly shortly after that, the Hello, Ed Lee song, which is based on the melody from Adele's song, Hello. And that, there are a couple of tiny moments of semi-humor. That one was a much more somber song, which was it was a progression from Not My City Anymore, and amazing lyrics. So how were you feeling when you did Hello, Ed Lee?
Yeah, maybe by then I was a little less hopeful. I think the homeless encampments in San Francisco had really started to, I don't know, they were very prominent around that time. And I remember it was also when the mayor was trying to really ready the city for the Super Bowl and clearing out places. And it was just like this, I don't know. So we're like, first we're bowing down to tech, and now we're bowing down to the Super Bowl or the NFL or whatever. But it just, yeah, I think you're right. I didn't maybe have as much hope, or I felt more somber about it. And when you bring it up, immediately it makes me think of that underpass that we show in the video. That was so prominent back then under what is that, Division or 13th?
Division.
Yeah, Division
Yeah.
Street. Yeah.
So just to describe what you're talking about,
Yeah.
I mean, now they're all over the city, but at that time, there's a major street that's under a freeway, and it seems like miles of tents of people living under that underpass in a tent. And the brutality of living on the streets is bad enough, but it is true that there are periodic sweeps, and this one leading up to our Super Bowl celebration was very notorious.
Yeah.
Because homeless people were essentially just swept away for that 2 weeks or whatever festival San Francisco was hosting, even though the Giants aren't even in San Francisco anymore. It's like we always court
The 49ers, you mean?
the 49ers. Thank you. Sorry, Giants.
Yeah.
Thank you. But it's like San Francisco has this ability to court the worst. Like, we don't even have the stadium or the team here, but you want to have a festival that's going to push all the poverty away to God knows where during those 2 weeks that people living in those tent cities went to. And whatever is courted to come to San Francisco, there is really not much for the residents here that comes of it.
Yeah. Well, the economic divide is just what was so shocking about, that I speak to in both those songs. It was just this extreme wealth and this kind of tech elite, side by side with extreme poverty and homelessness. And just I don't even know how to make sense of that. It's and just growing and growing, and that divide. And yeah.
Well, we are going to switch gears because I do want to talk about your other work, which also made me sad, but that was just more nostalgia. You made a video to a song that you have called Take Back Your Beaver. And
yes,
you very graciously allowed me to be, I think was I second camera or second AD? I think I was second AD or something like that, which I have no experience being at all. And I volunteered to be a caterer at the shoot. And then I don't know if it's actually a promotion, but I was promoted to second AD. So I got to see the shooting of one of the most iconic or the most memorable scenes of that video. Can you talk about both the song and the theme of Take Back Your Beaver?
Yeah, it's a true story. So again, I'm often riffing on the truth here. Yes, I was the Virgin Mary in the 3rd grade nativity play. And I also, when I was in my early 20s, I was, having a little romantic shenanigan with someone. And, we were about to get it on. And, clothes are coming off, and right in the middle of that he stops me and says well, I'll if you must know, he was speaking Spanish, and so he said to me, he stopped me, pushed me away, and said, "Tu tienes un bosque," which means you have a forest. So it's my bosque, my forest. And we didn't end up having our little tryst, because heaven forbid I have some hair on my body, and so it was this sort of, quasi moment of humiliation. I'm literally caught with my pants down, rejected for having a beaver, essentially. And so we sat there debating, you know, hair versus no hair. I was in my early 20s, so I wasn't as articulate in terms of some of my arguments around that now, but I turned this kind of moment of humiliation. I just started telling my friends about it, this story of, you know, beaver humiliation. And people would just laugh, or they'd say, oh, tell so-and-so the story about the beaver and blah, blah, blah. So then I just ended up writing a song about it. It just came out, and, you know, the chorus is like, take back your beaver, don't ever leave her, stand by your beaver, because
the future belongs to her.
the tomorrow belongs
Tomorrow
to her.
belongs
Oh my
to
God,
her.
I'm forgetting tomorrow belongs to her, you know? And I can't even remember my lyrics. And so I started playing that song, performing it at my cabaret shows. And it was always like, you know, such a big crowd pleaser. People always had a good response to it. So then I thought, oh, okay, this was after Not My City Anymore. And I felt like it's time to do something, you know, take a different turn here. So we turned that into a video, and yeah. And there's a character in the video too. My sister used to always have this rant about beavers, like you gotta get rid of your beaver, when we were like teenagers, or, you know, in our 20s. So she kind of, there's a, you know, representation of a sister character in that too, admonishing me for having a beaver as well. So
I know. It's just, we should mention that you worked with Danny Plotnick on that and Not My City Anymore. And then Jane Goldman, who you worked with for Hello Ed Lee and Will You Marry Me, which is another great video. But
Say I Do. Yeah, Say I Do.
or Say I Do. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I just watched them. That just shows the shape of my memory these
No,
days.
it's all good.
What I'm really hoping is that the second people listen to this podcast, they will go to YouTube and watch these videos and see how they're so funny and they're so stylized in a certain way. Like it's like the costumes people wear, the art direction, they're incredibly funny videos, and your performance, as always, is just right on the money, as are the other actors who are in it. So I hope people watch these. So Say I Do comes off your album, Honeymoon for One. So talk about that song and that video, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that song, I recorded a record in, I guess, God, when did I complete it? In 2010. I was working on it a couple years before that with a mentor and producer, Bonnie Hayes, who was quite the songwriter and producer herself. And we were realizing that the album was so much about, you know, my misadventures or my sort of misconceptions of who I am, or, you know, all that stuff. And realizing it was sort of the trajectory that all the songs were kind of taking in the album was sort of something about like moving towards a sense of self-acceptance. And I think Bonnie said to me, oh, you should write a song about, you know, marrying yourself. Or we were joking about that. It's all about, you know, the ultimate act of like, you know, acceptance or self-love or something. And it just came out. It came out so quickly. And it was me asking me to marry myself. And I mean, I think for most of my life, that was my issue or my hang up, was that I was kind of in a state of war with myself, you could say. Just, you know, a lot of lack of confidence, lack of self-worth. And so, you know, it's always been an upward trajectory. And I felt like that song just sort of made sense. And yeah, wrote it and recorded it pretty quickly. And then the video came about because there was a competition, the Berlin Music Video Awards. And the whole challenge is that you had to shoot it on an iPhone, or like, you know, you had to shoot it on a phone. And so, and when I perform it, it does have a campy quality, but the thing about it is that I really mean it. It has a fun and kind of, yeah, a very playful tone about it, but it actually, you know, there's a real sincerity beneath it too. So Yeah.
It's a wonderful song, and it's a wonderful video too. It looks great. I had no idea it'd been shot on a phone, but it does look great.
Thank you.
But it's interesting because most of the time that I have known you, you have been pet sitting, and you were always moving from house to house to house because you would go where the pets were.
Hmm.
And there have been big changes since the last time we talked.
Yeah, so I'm actually in Austin, Texas now. And just to kind of reference what we were talking about before, it's like I'm a gentrification chaser or something. Austin is one of the most sought after cities or places to, I mean, there's a huge tech presence there now, and it just keeps growing. And so I'm there, and again, very similar landscape, cranes everywhere,
Mm.
condo developments everywhere, high rises, and a huge, again, homeless encampments everywhere. That huge economic divide, cost of living just going up and up and up in Austin as well. So that's where I am now.
Yeah. Well, we had talked earlier about this idea of home, and you said that there are the obvious themes of home in Not My City Anymore and in Hello, Ed Lee. But you said that they were also in Take Back Your Beaver and Say I Do. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so, well, I will say this. When I was pet sitting, when I didn't have a physical home, I think I learned a really valuable lesson, and it was about home. It's that I might not have a physical home. And at the beginning, that was really unnerving. It was anxiety producing if a pet gig fell through, and suddenly I was like, where am I going? And I would stay in my minivan occasionally. I mean, I also have a huge network in the Bay Area. So I have these friends. I often would stay in their attic when a gig fell through or I wasn't booked. And my mom's near here. So I did always have this safety net. But at the same time, it was like not to have my own place sometimes was really hard. And packing up my stuff every few days or few weeks, then unpacking in someone's home, then packing again, and not really being grounded. So after a while, it was like, okay, I'm ready for a place again. But I feel like the lesson was home is here. And when I'm gesturing to my chest or my heart, like I that can sound a little corny maybe, but it's just like learning to be at home wherever I am. And I think there was this lesson of like I'm always going to be okay. Even if I don't know where
Mm.
I'm going to sleep tonight, I'm always going to be okay. And I mean, I have the fortune, like I said, of having a safety net of people I can stay with. It was never like I'm going to be sleeping on the streets. But home is here, and home is here inside me, and beyond just the physicality of that, this idea of being at home in oneself, because I think I spent a lot of my life not being at home in my own skin. I mean, this idea that like Take Back Your Beaver, this notion that we have to sculpt our bodies a certain way according to some sense of beauty outside of ourselves, or just liking who we are, accepting our bodies, accepting all the parts of ourselves. And that was a big struggle for me. It continues to be. It will be something I'm working on until I die. And I guess that's why I was drawn to things, like being a practitioner, hypnotherapy, stuff like that. All the ways that I can become more comfortable in my own skin and accepting, yes, I have body hair. Yes, I'm aging. Yes. And so that song, Say I Do, where I ask myself to marry myself, it is sort of the ultimate statement of like, yes, I'm here with me. I'm going to stay. I'm committing to myself finally.
Well, I think that journey of self-acceptance, so many of us are on it. So I'm so happy that you do create songs that celebrate not only the journey, but give us a glimpse of that destination of asking ourselves to marry ourselves. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, Candace, where can people find out more about you, both your music and then also your healing practice?
So it's so silly. I haven't really had the time to kind of work some of these logistics out. All my music and performance stuff is on CandaceRoberts.com. And the healing practitioner stuff is on CandaceRoberts.net, which is so crazy. So Candace with an A, CANDACE, and then Roberts.com for the art, .net for the the healing work, which again, it really is all one thing in the end, I feel. And I do have aspirations when I have a second to just merge it into one site. I mean, I don't, people would always say, oh, but you can't let your hypnotherapy clients see your Take Back Your Beaver video. And I said, no, I want them to see my Take Back Your Beaver video. So I need to turn it into one site, both the healing and the art, and it will happen at some point.
Oh, that's good. If you just Google you too, you see both websites come up. And also if you go to YouTube and just search for Candace Roberts.
Candace Roberts, you could punch in Take Back Your Beaver or Not My City Anymore. It'll all come up. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I hope that people will do that because it is such a moving, funny, and delightful body of work that you have there for people to see.
Thank you, Pam. Seriously. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being on the show. And we will just continue to stay in touch.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
I want to include some of Candace's song, Take Back Your Beaver. I'll include the verse that was inspired by the real event she talks about in the interview.
I'm seeing someone new, God help me, what should I do? I fluctuate, I Rochambeau, gonna try me something new. With urban sprawl, oh natural, it's on, I'm feeling free. Only get so far, says you just can't hang, we'll see the forest for the trees. I'm not some hairless wonder, I'm not a little girl. Take back your beaver, don't ever leave her, stand by your beaver, 'cause tomorrow belongs to her.
I'm so glad that Candace Roberts came on this episode to talk about the many ways she's explored the idea of home in her life and the songs that came from that exploration. If you want to learn more about Candace, you can look up her music on CandaceRoberts.com. If you want to learn more about her work as a healing artist, you can look on CandaceRoberts.net. I'll include this info in the show notes, and I'll also include links to the videos for Not My City Anymore and Take Back Your Beaver. The music you've heard in this podcast is Yellow Light District by Lobo Loco. Beethoven's Piano Sonata No. 15 in D major was performed by Karina Galanian. In the opening, you heard music by Ketsa, Distant Records, and this week's guest, Candace Roberts. You also heard another song by Candace at the conclusion of the interview. This podcast was edited by Eva Hristova. Thank you for listening to this episode where we talk about different ways to think about home. What does home mean to you? Did anything in this story resonate with you? Feel free to share with me on social media or on my website at arthealsallwoundspodcast.com.